First question is from Eric Duenas. What techniques or exercises will help with back thickness? I have good width, but lack that 3D look.
Deadlift.
Down with the thickness.
I love this question because there's controversy around this. For some weird reason, there's still fitness dorks out there that don't think deadlifting builds a back. And this is exactly like, okay, so I got 9 years under my belt.
Bro, can you please find that before and after?
It's so old now.
Can you please find it? It is the most profound, like, and you went from, it wasn't like a beginner to, you'd already been lifting forever. You're already a pro. The difference in your back from not deadlifting to deadlifting. In fact, I think you eliminated most exercises.
Everything. All I did. So
it's so crazy.
The audience that's listened for a long time has probably heard this story and they're over it or whatever. But for the people that haven't heard this story, when we all met and got together, my history of lifting was very, very bodybuilder-esque. And I rarely ever squatted and deadlifted. I never deadlifted, and I rarely squatted. Intermittently, I squatted. I was definitely leg press, lunge guy, all that shit. And when we all got together, Sal was a really, really strong deadlifter. And I had never said, you know what, let's see if I can get my deadlift up and see if I can actually improves my back. And literally not actually fully adopting this philosophy until this point. And all I cared about at that point was I'm going to try and get up to as much weight as he was. And at that time I started, I was only able to deadlift like 225 pounds. Over a course of a year, I worked all the way up to 550. Now keep in mind, I hadn't really deadlifted at all. So the gains like that are unprecedented, right? Yeah. And so
it was a new movement for you. You already had a ton of muscle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had a good physique. I had a real wide back. I'd already been competing, won some shows.
It probably went from 225 to like 400 real fast. And then it started to get harder.
Yeah. Okay. That's where it slowed down after 400 and it creeped up. But the biggest thing is I never had those, what they call like the canals.
Yeah, the columns.
Yeah,
down the
columns.
back. Yeah.
Columns or canal down your back. And which gives you that thick looking. I was always wide. I had a small waist. I had a big lats, and so I had a wide back, but it wasn't deep 3D whatever look. And it was the deadlifting that completely thickened. I mean, I got wider and thicker from deadlifting.
Yeah, the width of the back comes from the lats. The thickness is the erector spinae, the rhomboids, the lower and mid trapezius, and there's a lot of muscles in the back, but those are the ones that are really going to give you that thick look. Now, I understand aesthetics, so bodybuilding definitely made back width like a big thing. Like it was like, oh, you know, you go up there, you do a pose called a lat spread, which a lat spread is specifically a bodybuilding pose. Nobody walks around that way. There's no function to doing a lat spread other than showing how wide your lats look. In the real world,
invisible lat syndrome, where the guy walks around the gym. Like this.
God, it looks like he's pushing a wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
In the real world, back thickness is what shows up, not necessarily width will show up too. But what looks impressive when you're just standing relaxed is thickness. Now, why do we find that so impressive when someone's standing relaxed? That's function. Lats definitely are functional. I'm not saying they're not. They're very big muscles. They're very important. But that thickness is what stabilizes the spine. It's what makes you be able to lift things. It's what makes your core strong. And it just sends that signal to someone looking at you, and they see you and they go, oh God, that guy or that girl, they're really fit. Like even for women, here's what's funny, because we talk about back size and muscularity, and the average woman's like, I don't want that. When women have a well-developed back, they have that nice dip in the back. That thickness gives it, yes.
That canal, yeah.
And so you wear like a low-cut dress or whatever.
Oh, on women, it looks gorgeous. I mean, curve and shape. I mean, men and women. I think the more curve, more shape, muscular curve and shape that you have in the body, the more 3D you look, the more defined, the more muscular, the more fit you look. I've never met a guy, okay, this guy, I think Eric is the person who's asking the question. I've never met a guy who can deadlift 400 more pounds that didn't have a thick back.
Yeah.
So go get that 400 pounds. Like,
Yeah.
I've never met somebody who is deadlifting 400 or more pounds, which is an attainable goal for most all men, okay? 400 pounds that didn't have a thick back.
Yeah, so deadlifts at the top, and then under that has to be a non-chest supported barbell row or a Pendlay row.
Stones.
Oh, geez.
Rounded back.
Oh, my God.
Lifting.
I mean, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
I mean, everybody discounts that, but it's functional strength that actually produces that kind of.
I'm going to make the case for that right now. And if you don't have an Atlas stone, which you probably don't, you could do a Zercher deadlift, which will give you something similar.
Sandbag.
Right. So what it produces, what happens with an Atlas stone lift or a Zercher deadlift or lifting a heavy sandbag is what's called rounded back lifting. Now, not rounded from the low back standpoint, but rather when you're hugging something like this, your scapula has to spread and your thoracic is rounded to an extent. Now, why that produces so much back thickness, we now know with data. When a muscle is loaded in a stretched position, you tend to cause more muscle hypertrophy or growth.
Where else do you put the lats in this stretched position?
You mean the rhomboids?
Or rhomboids, rhomboids, traps, and even the lats, because lats are getting spread out that way too, are all in that stretched position and in an isometric contraction.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You don't see that.
Yeah. So, and if you look at the Greek statues, because he mentions in the question that Doug didn't read this part, but he says, "I want my back to look like the statue of Hercules." Have you guys ever seen?
Oh, it's cool.
I don't know. Maybe Doug, you could pull up Hercules statue, Greek Hercules.
It's
statue.
one of those. Where
look at his back.
Yeah, it's just looks super strong. Like the physique, it's like really pronounced.
There was no bodybuilding back then, so they were literally creating.
Wasn't bubbly. Let's say
what they knew to be functional. Like, well, we know strong people. This is what they typically look like. And
part of what that Atlas does too is so your core wraps all the way around your spine too, which is part of your low back muscles is part of the core. And so massive core stability in an exercise like that too. So you're developing that really, really well.
Yeah.
Let's see a picture.
It's disconnected, Doug.
Those are pretty mountains though.
Yeah. Man, that back looks look at
this back.
That's
look at the thickness on that, dude. You see a guy like that walking away from you? Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this.
I'm not going to bother him.
We've talked about this on and off air before.
He's got round glutes
I can see a competitor posing on Instagram and know
if they deadlift
how well, or if they even deadlift at all.
Yeah.
Like I can see that right away. And a good example of this on the elite level in competing is C-Bum.
Yeah.
The way he is built, he's built like a guy who squats and deadlifts really heavy.
Yeah.
And he has
avoid those. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of competitors unfortunately do today. So go after the deadlift, no matter what you hear from some of these other fitness dorks that think that it's not a good back exercise.
Yeah.